Oh, go Power Rangers! Go Power Rangers! Go Power Rangers! Oh man, I think I've caused myself serious mental damage. This was way too much to ingest all at once. But I'm now familiar with the show. I've skimmed through the first 3 seasons, plus I've seen the first 2 movies. With the first season, I watched the first 30 episodes straight, and after that I realized it would be impossible to finish, plus I wanted to see seasons 2 and 3 to close out the Mighty Morphin era, so I watched the majority of the rest of them in fast speed, stopping only to watch the most important episodes based on what Linkara and the internet in general seem to recommend the most. When I say I'm now familiar with the show, I mean I can now finally distinguish all the names like Goldar, Zord, Zordon, and Zordled. I mean Lord Zed. Why do they have to sound so similar? The basic gist, if you're new to this too, it's about 5 normal teenagers who are active in gymnastics, martial arts, and working out. They're recruited to fight against evil by the good guy Zordon, a blue floating head who operates in a base situated on top Vazquez rocks. Look at that. Look at that, they just slapped it on there. Oh, that's great. He has an assistant named Alpha 5 who I can't stand. All he says is, ay, 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 and it gets really annoying really fast. I like the design. The lights on his body are shimmering and always in motion like an elaborate Christmas display. I mean, it's a pretty spectacular looking robot, but I've just had enough with that voice. The main villain who prompts Zordon into enlisting the teenagers is an alien witch with a cone bra who's been floating around space in a garbage can for many years. To be exact, 10,000 years, as you'll be reminded at the start of every episode. Her name is Rita. Rita. It's like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The wizard named Tim. There are some who call me Tim. Of course, her full name is Rita Repulsa, and that's pretty fitting. Anyway, Zordon gives the teenagers power coins, which they redeem at the video arcade to get lots of free games. No, that would be silly. It turns them into color-coded superheroes wearing spandex suits and motorcycle helmets, and gives them the powers of ancient animals like a saber-toothed tiger, mastodon, and dinosaurs, but they're all robots. The show just started, and we're already talking about robot dinosaurs. What else could possibly happen in 23 seasons? I have no fucking idea. So these ancient robot animals are called Zords, and they don't do much other than come running out of volcanoes and shit looking awesome. The reason they don't do much is because they don't have time. Right away, they all combine together to form Megazord, and that's when shit gets really crazy. I actually had to stop watching and take a break. It's too much. Like, when does watching this sort of thing start to feel normal? I find it really amusing how the Power Rangers can't say anything without punching and doing all this shit in the air. It's like, can't they stand still for 1 second? Also, I can't get over how many times they say the word power. This is your Power Lance, a weapon of great power. This is the Power Sword, key to all the weapons' powers. You could make a drinking game out of it. I wonder if they had a subscription to Nintendo Power. The terminology in this show gets nuts. In the episode Oyster Stew, they actually use the term oysterizer. Dude, oysterizer. There's also Bulk and Skull. These are the comedy characters. They're completely exaggerated, especially with Skull's high-pitched Riddler laugh. They're always getting hit by pies and cakes. Everything they say or do is usually followed up with cartoon sound effects. They're often trying to figure out the true identity of the Power Rangers, but other than that, they're just comic relief. I had no idea they would be main characters of the show. This surprised me. They even become police officers later on, and they almost got their own show. I don't really know what to think of them. They're kind of lovable, in a silly way, but I don't feel like they belong. You're watching a show about superheroes fighting monsters, and then all of a sudden a slapstick tornado comes flying in to wreck every other scene. As expected, the most appealing part of the show for me is the monster battles. I've compared the effects to Godzilla, but it would be more accurate to compare them to Gamera. If you've seen a lot of the Gamera films, you'll notice the effects are much cheaper and the monster designs are a lot more ridiculous. You have a monster with a saw on its head. But let's get even more ridiculous. In Power Rangers, you have a turtle with a traffic light on its head. Or an upside-down pumpkin head. There's a new monster just about every week, and they're all absurd. and they talk. If I saw this as a kid, I would have lost my shit. Imagine a Gamera villain saying things like, "Have a nice trip," and the Pumpkinhead raps. There's even a Frankenstein monster. I so badly want to invent a time machine to go back to my teenage self and scream in my ear, "What are you doing? Watch this show!" My only complaint is that the monsters don't interact with the buildings very much, but I can understand that it's a TV budget. They do smash the buildings every now and then, especially later in the third season, and whenever that happens, I get excited. I just love seeing practical effects. You can tell when something is actually getting destroyed on camera rather than being animated on a computer. I also have to comment on the Megazord costume. Considering how bulky this thing looks, the actor inside is actually able to get a lot of movement out of it. In every episode, the Power Rangers fight a bunch of people in gray spandex called the Putties, which are made from turds baked in a cookie mold. Then they fight a wisecracking monster who grows into a larger monster, and they call the Zords to form Megazord, and the episode switches drastically into giant Japanese monster battle mode. A giant power sword is summoned, which comes out of thin air into Megazord's hand in a flashy light show. The enemy monster is finished off, falling face first. We jump cut to a burst of sparks in the monster's place. We usually get a low angle shot looking up at Megazord being victorious, and the whole time, that energizing metal theme song is rocking you senseless. It's almost reminiscent of Iron Maiden. One episode is all it takes to get stuck in your head, let alone hundreds. When you hear "Go, go, Power Rangers," you're thinking, yeah, damn straight, go Power Rangers! After watching a ton of these, I started to feel like I was watching the same thing over and over again, and parts of it I actually was. The sequence where the Zords form Megazord is the same recycled footage repeated every episode. After a while, they start abridging the footage so you don't have to see the whole Zord sequence, but if you were a latecomer just tuning in, it wouldn't make any sense at all. Just looks like a bunch of random shit flashing together. This shameless footage recycling surprisingly took a long time to get old for me, only because it's so awesome. The shot where the T-Rex Zord comes out of the volcano is very well executed. The fire and heat distorts the image. It's a great touch. I also like the saber-toothed tiger. It looks like a runaway action figure. It all looks like a toy commercial, not just the fact that the Zords are all miniatures, but the way it's paced. With all the fast editing and in-your-face camera angles, it sort of escalates the style of toy commercials into a pop art. And once the Dragon Zord is introduced, oh my, this thing is really cool. This could have totally fit in with the Godzilla universe. And then there's all these different Zord combinations like Thunder Megazord. Yeah, just simple Megazord's no longer enough. And then there's Ultra Zord, who has a massive Ultra Boner. At the start of the second season, Lord Zed becomes the main villain. What do you say about this guy? Just look at him. His brain is exposed, he's got no skin, and he's wearing metal underwear. He walks like he took a dump in them. And look, duct tape. There's totally duct tape on his staff. Later on, Rita comes back and the two of them get married. Did not expect that. Lord Zed was not originally part of Sentai. He was created specifically for Power Rangers. As mentioned, the show partly uses recycled footage from Super Sentai, and it's fun to pick out which footage is recycled and which is original. The scenes with the monsters and special effects are usually Super Sentai, and the scenes with the American actors are original footage for Power Rangers. It's a lot like the first Godzilla movie, how they filmed new scenes with Raymond Burr for the American version. They could have just redubbed it, but I guess they wanted to make it more appealing for American audiences. I find it interesting to try and identify the Sentai footage. It would be an extended project, but I would really love to watch through a season of Super Sentai and compare the two shows. I can tell the obvious things. For instance, whenever we see Bronson Cave or Vasquez Rocks, we know it was shot in America. It's interesting to see how American and Japanese scenes cut together. For example, the main cast will be at Bronson Cave, then a fight breaks out, and all of a sudden the background changes to a generic, dry, rocky landscape. It looks similar enough to pass, but we know we just leaped across the Pacific. Rita was originally part of the Sentai footage. They just dubbed her. She never shares any scenes with the American cast, at least not early on. What I find real interesting is the actor who plays Rita gets changed quite a bit, but the voice actor stays the same. You're seeing a different face, but hearing the same voice. I was almost fooled. Is it her? Is it not? It plays with your mind. Also, I could be wrong, but I think they shipped some of the Sentai monster costumes overseas to complete more scenes for Power Rangers, and since the costumes had already been used, they probably had more damage, like they got the sloppy seconds. If so, this may be the reason there's some scenes where Goldar's mouth is malfunctioning. It moves by some kind of animatronic or puppeteer work, and in most scenes it works decent, but there's a lot of times in what seems like localized footage where the mouth is stuck open, moving only a little. And this is really funny to see when he's talking in that growly voice.
Oh, you think you're going to save your friend, don't you? You gave up too easily. You're all in trouble now. Fool, you've just given the dragon dagger to me.
Oh, no!
Also, Super Sentai had the habit of changing the Ranger suits every season, and each season was given a different title, like Zoo Ranger, Die Ranger, and when Power Rangers started, Super Sentai was already on its 16th season, or series, or whatever you want to call it. It was already a success in Japan, so when Power Rangers came along and was also a success internationally, it seemed they didn't want to risk losing that success, so they didn't change it as much. The point is, a lot of the action footage of the Rangers in the suits was from Sentai. It was the Japanese actors, since you couldn't recognize them in the suits anyway. They just redubbed the voices. But they couldn't do that anymore after the suits changed. Not that they couldn't, but they chose not to. So they continued to use the old suits and had to come up with all these sneaky ways to adapt the footage they had, to reshoot, re-edit footage, and work around whatever curveballs Super Sentai would throw that year. And to this very day, that tradition still continues. I find that very impressive. Still, there's a lot of things that do change. About halfway into the first season, there's the introduction of a Green Ranger who summons the Dragon Zord by playing the flute with a knife. In the second season, he loses his power and he goes away, but he comes back shortly as the White Ranger, who has this hilarious talking sword. The White Ranger suit was in tune with the Sentai Die Ranger suit, so while they didn't upgrade the rest of the Rangers, they at least used one of the same suits, which meant they could use Japanese footage of the White Ranger. Also, halfway into Season 2, 3 of the Ranger cast members are changed out because of contractual reasons, but they acknowledge it. Zordon transfers their power over to the new Rangers, but they go on wearing the same costumes. It's like the band Kiss, switching out members but keeping the same personas. It's a shame. I was just starting to like these characters, and deep into the third season, Kimberly goes too. I can imagine exactly how this must have felt if you watched this as a teenage boy. It would have probably felt like there's this girl in your class who you really like and who you're just starting to know, and she gets transferred to another school. Damn. Over time, Power Rangers started adapting more to Sentai, updating the suits and accepting the change that came with every season. Power Rangers Zeo, Power Rangers Turbo, and so on. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie came in between the second and third season. I heard it was non-canon and didn't follow the continuity of the show, so I assumed it didn't matter what order I watched it in, so I decided to watch it while I was still halfway into the first season. When I saw the new Ranger characters, I figured that was just the lack of continuity everyone was talking about. Then I saw the second season and how all these characters were introduced, and now I wish I watched it in order. Whether it's canon or not, it does follow the progression of the show. Anyway, this is one of those certain kind of movie adaptations that could only exist in the 90s. It just has that wacky nature. It kind of reminds me of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. It has that same level of quality. It's garbage, but it's delightful. It looks like a more cinematic version of the show, which it should. You can tell everything's been updated to be more like movie quality, but it still has the same cheesiness. The villain, Ivan Ooze, kind of reminds me of Freddy Krueger and the guy from the Nightmare board games. Rita, Lord Zed, and Goldar are all there too, so it's definitely over-cluttered with villains. The biggest takeaway thing I have to say about this film is during the third act, when all the action happens, it goes full CG. No practical effects, no Super Sentai stock footage to work with, obviously. But my God, this might be the worst CG I've ever seen in a mainstream film. It's mid-90s, I don't expect everything to look as great as Jurassic Park, which of course used practical effects in combination with its CG, but this looks horrible. It's worse than PlayStation 1 graphics. Even with bad practical effects, there's charm to it, but this has no charm. Or maybe it does. Does it? The second film, Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, occurs between the Zeo and Turbo series. Yeah, I skipped ahead, just so I can say I've seen all the movies. The first thing I took note of is that the Rangers don't get into the suits until about 30 minutes in. In the show, things are always happening fast, as if they think you have no patience whatsoever, but this movie does the opposite. It's more like anti-Turbo. There's a young kid who becomes the new Blue Ranger, but when he morphs into the suit, he grows into adult size. If they were going to use an adult for the action scenes, why'd they cast a kid at all? The main villain is Divatox, and look, there's no way around it. Her boobs are showing off in every scene. It's a major distraction. These right here are the real stars of the film. Kimberly and Jason come back, but the whole time they're either captured or turned evil. There's some really weird creature effects. These wizard guys have these big cute eyes. Aw, look at that. They kind of have this innocent expression, but I don't know what to make of it. Like, it's just bizarre. Then there's this villain henchman who always has this freaky grin. Oh God, it's bugging me out. I think they did a great job creating these faces, but they don't move very much. There's not much of a range of expression, just a weird frozen face. The Megazord fight sequence, or should I say Turbo Megazord, is the highlight because the effects are practical. This rectifies the lousy CG from the first movie, and it's upgraded from the TV quality. This looks like what I'd expect. This is the movie version of the Megazord fight sequence. For this reason, I prefer Turbo over the first movie, but neither of them are very good. The new film, Power Rangers, is on the way shortly. I plan on seeing it, and I'm glad I now finally know something about the show. This was one of the reasons I kicked my ass into gear. My general impression from the trailers is that it's trying too much to be like the shitty Transformers movies. I'm so sick of those. But we'll see what happens. I hope it honors the show rather than following with whatever trends are going on nowadays. Of course they have to update it. It should be updated. It should look and feel like a big budget colossal revamp of the show. I just hope it keeps the same spirit, and also I hope it has the theme song. Now that I'm familiar with the franchise, what can I say? How do I wrap this up? Well, it's a lot of fun. Is it for kids? Yes. Is it for cult monster fans? Yes. Is it stupid? Yes. Is it awesome? Yes. It's every contradictory thing I ever thought it would be. It made Japanese monsters popular in America even if we didn't realize it. And for that, I thank Power Rangers from the perspective of a noob, or should I say, a new fan.